all-terrain ion cannon. It looks just like an AT-AT, but the back half has been cut off. And it's a stormtrooper with this big cannon on the back of an AT-AT. So I thought I would talk about the planned 1986 line, the one that was going to come after the Revenge of the Sith. Listen to me. After the Power of the Force line. Here's their plan they submitted to Lucasfilm. Now, I've heard that Lucasfilm didn't approve of this plan, and it really didn't matter because Kenner was going to end up pulling the plug on Star Wars anyway, in the Droids line, the Ewok line. In '85, everything got pulled anyway. But what Kenner was going to do was going to be more of expanded universe. Their plan was to step away from the films and do a whole new series of figures based. This is the concept they had. They were going to bring in this new villain called Atha Prime. Somehow he harnessed the power, the technology to make an evil clone warrior clan. You know, kind of like stormtroopers, but more. They weren't really like. Well, I'll say they were like stormtroopers. They looked a lot. I think they had a red cape. They would have. They were a little more bulkier than the stormtroopers. But that was the plan. That this Prime guy was going to be the new villain, who was going to be the leader of this clone army. They called it Clone Warriors, but I guess it's a clone army. And they, of course, do battles with the rebels, a more mature group of rebels, a more established rebel group that was starting to take over the galaxy at that time. Luke was going to be a full-fledged Jedi Knight. Han Solo was more kind of flashy hero look to him. Now, on the last video I did on YouTube, the Power of the Force video, if you watch it, I show some concept art of the Luke and Han. So if you want to check them out, just go to YouTube's Star Wars Junk YouTube page and look for the Power of the Force video we did a couple of days ago, and you'll be able to see the concept drawings of the Jedi Luke and the hero Han. And then they were going to do, they kind of did other ships, some of the ships they planned. One was a little vehicle. I don't recall the name. It's kind of like a mini rig. But if you remember the Falcon, right in the front of the Falcon is kind of shaped like I guess kind of like a U. It's got an opening right there between the two big, I don't know if you call them ports. But this is going to be kind of like an escape pod ship that fit into that, which is very interesting because that ship came out in '77, long before they even planned this little add-on piece. But it's funny how that add-on piece fits in there perfectly. And that's something they were going to bring in. They also was going to bring in, of course, the X-Wing was going to come back. They redesigned it. It was going to be more of a black and orange look. It looked pretty cool from the concept pictures we've seen of it. And one thing I'll say about this concept they did from what we've seen of the concept art, they didn't go too far out of Lucas's universe or his vision for Star Wars. Everything, the concept they came up with, looked like something you would see in Star Wars. They didn't get really too carried away with it. So that was Kenner's plan to continue this series. Now there's something interesting about this. Now this evil Prime guy was going to have his own ship called the Apex Invader, which is a pretty nice looking ship. I wish I could show you on this podcast how they look. In fact, we'll throw up some pictures maybe on Twitter on the day we air this. So go to Kenner Toys on Twitter and you'll be able to see some of these concept arts we'll throw up too. And to know what this Prime guy looks like, he's kind of taken from concept paintings for the Emperor's Royal Guard. So it's kind of based on what the Emperor Guard was going to look like. And we actually did get a figure of this guy. He appeared in, I think, Dark Empire comics, and then Hasbro, when they did the Expanded Universe toys, they released a figure of him. I think they gave him a different name, and I'm sorry I don't have that name off the top of my head. It was like Imperial Cinetel, I think that was his name or something. But it's basically what this Prime guy was going to look like. But that's not all we're going to get. Here's the one everybody would want. A Tarkin. We would have gotten a Tarkin in 1986 line. That's right. He was going to be part of the expanded universe. I know what you're saying. But Junkman, Tarkin's dead. He blew up in the Death Star. Well, Kenner had it in their mind that somehow he escaped the Death Star right before it blew up. And this whole time he's been in hiding through Empire and Return of the Jedi. But now he's back and he takes command of the Imperial military. So I don't know, I'm guessing Tarkin was going to be like the lead of the military, and this Prime guy was going to be working with Tarkin. It's interesting, but the bad thing is if they did do a Tarkin for this expanded line, I got a feeling he might not look like the Tarkin we know from A New Hope, and that's the figure we wanted. Maybe so, maybe the outfit would have stayed the same. From what I understand, the Tarkin figure never got close to being made. There was no concept art for it. There was no hard copy. There was no test copy or nothing like that. They had a little booklet that Kenner did, sent out to Lucasfilm. It just has a picture of Tarkin, Peter Cushing, scene from A New Hope in it. But if you ask me, bringing Tarkin back was stupid. I mean, how could he escape the Death Star? I mean, it blew up like, I mean, we saw him right there, and then the next thing, the thing blew up. That would have been worse than whoever's idea it was to bring Darth Maul back. And the evil Prime guy also was going to have his own droid, Blue 4. It's kind of, if I have to say who he looked like, I don't know the name of the droid, sorry, but if you go back and watch A New Hope, the special edition, there's a droid. They made a figure of him too right at the time the special edition came out, and he conks another one on the head. He's kind of like a humanoid droid, but he's kind of hollow in the middle. I wish I knew his name off the top of my head. I know I need to research this before I start talking about it, but that's who it was going to be. His name was going to be Blue 4. He was a droid for Prime. And then they had an idea for an Imperial Droid that was going to, it's really just a repainted R5-D4. This black R5 unit can be seen in Return of the Jedi. So I think he's on the Death Star. But anyway, he was going to be in the 1986 line. I know one of the droids that is planned for this line was Imperial Attack Droid. There's been some concept figures of him made that was presented to Lucasfilm. And what they did is took some parts of other figures to make this figure. So it would look totally different when they released it. But they took, I think, the legs of a 2-1B, the middle, the torso of IG-88, and then put some kind of weird, crazy weapons on it and molded it all together. It's really, like I said, I'll put it up on Kenner Toys on Twitter. It's very, very crazy looking. But that's another one planned for the 86 line that was called Imperial Attack Droid. There's actually another Imperial Attack Droid they was working on. This was a concept they made. They took a Zuckuss and a 2-1B. Oh, this is very weird. Okay, they took the Zuckuss, who was, is probably the new guys know it was Forlom, took the head off, put some 2-1B arms on his shoulders, and for the head is Forlom's gun. I don't understand. Okay, that's the best I can explain it. It's crazy. And there was actually another Imperial Droid that was going to be, this was more like an R2 unit, but what the concept has is a mix between a power droid and an FX7. It was going to be loaded with tons of weapons, like I think 3 on each side of his, by his legs, right above his legs. You kind of think of R2, it's kind of round like that, and right above the legs. He was going to have 3 missiles on each side. Also presented this time to Lucasfilm for the 85-86 line was, I wish we got this, the Rebel Blockade Runner. That's right, as we all see from the beginning of A New Hope. Now from the concept drawings and stuff we see, it's got a Return of the Jedi logo on it, so it's probably clear that Kenner planned this for Return of the Jedi. They didn't have time, something happened, they didn't do it for Return of the Jedi, so they kept moving it up, probably couldn't get into the Power of the Force line, so they kept pushing it up, and their plan was to bring it into this expanded universe line they were doing for 86. I wish we got a Blockade Runner. Man, that would have been awesome. But the photo of it looks kind of weird because it's it's not like the Falcon that was like more like a playset and a ship. This was a ship, but it had a Luke, but he stood it, and half of his body stood out of it. Also planned for this 86 line would have been a Skyhopper. You see Luke playing with his little toy Skyhopper in A New Hope, where they were going to do a Skyhopper, Luke's home ship. How it was going to work into the expanded universe story, I'm not really sure. And that's another thing, I'm not sure how they were going to tell this story. They didn't have a cartoon to go with it. They didn't have anything really to go with it. I don't know. My thought is they would put maybe a comic book with the toys, or I guess they could have put on the back of the card a little information about the Prime guy and Tarkin escaping and the Clone Warriors. But I think it would have been better if they did it with a comic book. That might have been copying Master Universe a little too much for that time. But Kenner did put a comic book with the alien figures. If you remember the alien figures that were based on the cartoon that never got aired, not on the movies, they came with a Dark Horse comic book. Another one for 1986 was an updated land speeder, XP-36. It looks almost like the regular land speeder. It paints a little different. It's got some kind of booster rockets on the top. Also for 86, a redone snow speeder was going to be a Rebel armor sand speeder, more for like Tatooine. It looks like the snow speeder, except it's orange. At least, that's the concept. A lot of this stuff that was presented, like I said, to Lucasfilms was concepts, which they made to put in this binder that was sent to Lucasfilm. So it might have been changed before the actual release, but this was kind of like an orange sand look to it. It was more for like battle and sand, like on Tatooine. Now, I'm not going to go through every little thing they were going to do, but I'll link to the Star Wars Collectors Archive database. It's a fantastic website, and they have the whole booklet you can look at. So I'll look in the description of this podcast, or if you listen on YouTube, in the description below, and I'll put a link to that because it's amazing. But I wanted to bring up this one. It's sadly just a concept art for what they planned, and it was going to be called the Imperial Outpost playset. This was going to be a huge Imperial playset. Awesome. Now, the concept art has an AT-AT next to it, and the base is like 2 times the size of the AT-AT. Now, you can't tell from this drawing if maybe this is a smaller AT-AT and it's part of the playset, because I can't imagine it being the AT-AT we all know and love today and then having a playset bigger than the AT-AT. It's huge. But this would have been an amazing playset, I think, because Kenner Line was lacking really good playsets other than the Death Star. I guess the canteen is kind of fun, but there's not, it's not great. Not as fun. The Death Star is the best out of the play sets. Everything else is just little, the Hoth base, and then they had those 3 different ones that had the cardboard backdrop. They never had really good play sets. This one, although we can't see what it did, we only can see a drawing of the Outpost. It looks like it would have been amazing, and it kind of looks like it's on Hoth, but it kind of looks like the Imperial shield generator. You can see, it's kind of like a mix between the shield generator and maybe part of the towers on the Death Star. The ones that had the cannon in it, because it's a big base. It's got cannons on top, and you see a big radar dish on it, and then cannons all over the place. Like I said, check out the Star Wars Collectors Archives and linked below, or check Twitter where I'm going to post some pictures of it later. This playset, I would have gave anything to see this. I would have loved, even if it didn't get released, I would have loved to have seen photos of it, besides just the concept drawing. And another one I'll bring up real quick is the ATIC all-terrain ion cannon. It looks just like an AT-AT, but the back half has been cut off, and it's a stormtrooper with this big cannon on the back of an AT-AT. I would love to see that in a movie. That just sounds really awesome. But what do you think? I would love to hear comments. Hit me up on Twitter, comments below if you're on YouTube, and let me know what you think about this whole expanded universe they can do. Are you glad they didn't do it? Part of me says, well, I'm kind of glad they didn't, because it might have would cheapen the Star Wars brand or line. And I'm curious what you think about this expanded line and the whole thing about the Prime guy, about Tarkin escaping the Death Star. What do you think about that? Tarkin escaping the Death Star. Isn't that crazy? I'm glad they didn't do that.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.